Hello, everybody. Welcome to Citywide Training and Development's session on Personal Budgeting Basic and the Corona Relief Check Stimulus Review. Again, thanks for joining us today. And what we'll be discussing today is some tips and tricks on what you can do with the check that you will be seeing either showing up in your mail or you may have already gotten it. We're going to divide up our session today into two parts. Part one, we'll talk about personal budgeting basics, and part two, we'll talk about the Coronavirus Relief Check Stimulus Review for 2020. So hello again, and my name is Karen Clark. And the first thing we want to talk about today is, what is a budget? So a budget is a personal financial statement. I know for some people, the word budget is actually a bad word, but it really helps us out in terms of being able to allocate our future and current income towards our bills, our expenses, debt repayment, and of course, that bad S word, savings. So I'm going to review some methods and tools that are available for creating, using, and managing a personal budget. So what you'll want to do is to, again, have a budget that keeps your spending in check. You want to make sure that your savings are on track for the future. So it's basically a plan. It helps keep your eye on the prize. It also helps for you to ensure that you don't overspend. And it helps you prepare for emergencies. And it also helps you, determine what bad habits that you might have. So calculating a budget seems simple enough. What money are you bringing in? That would include your paychecks, if you have a second or even a third job, if you have child support coming in or alimony, or it might be retirement or Social Security. Your cash expenses, on the other hand, are your bills, things that you're paying out. It could be your rent or your mortgage, expenses for your car, repairs, utilities, obviously, as well as other expenses. So the differences between the two, you take your cash balance minus your bills or cash expenses, and that tells you what money you have left over, or we'll call that a surplus, or money that you don't have. You dug yourself into a hole. So next, let's talk about 8 steps to a successful budget. Number 1, budget tools. So what kind of tools might you use? Paper and pen, or paper, pen, and a pencil. I actually use a pencil because I do a lot of erasing when I do my budget. But there's also budgeting apps. You can use an Excel spreadsheet. So there's a number of things that you can use as budget tools. Step 2, classify your budget entries. So for instance, utilities. Do you live in an apartment? Maybe your water is included in your rent, but then you're responsible for gas. Or if you own a home or renting a home, chances are you're paying water, electric, gas, cable is another expense that you could put on. Of course, credit cards or debit cards. Don't forget about groceries. Don't forget about gas for your car. Don't forget about childcare. Everything that you spend money on is considered an expense. Step 3, you want to be objective about what you owe and be objective about your situation. It may not always be a fun time. In fact, one of the top 5 things that people have difficulty discussing are money issues. So you want to make sure that you're being real with yourself. Your objective should be to at the very least, break even. If you're doing a little better, then you have a little money left over for savings. But ultimately, you don't want to overspend. Step 4, establish goals. Now, when we talk about goals, don't make them so rigid that if you don't meet those goals, that you're disappointed. Don't do that to yourself. Be realistic with those goals, and understand that goals can be adjusted based on your changing circumstances. And we're certainly in the times when our circumstances can change daily. So with those goals, you want to research them. You want to determine whether or not they're short or long-term goals. You want to define those goals and write them down. Number 5, represent those goals as numbers. Don't say, I want to go on vacation. Or how about this? Let's make it a little more realistic. I want to be able to pay my mortgage. Okay, well, write down the actual number. Don't let it be pie in the sky, because we need to make sure that we have money to cover those necessary expenses. So you can base those numbers, however, on historical data. Yes, we've been experiencing our quarantine situations for the last 3 or 4 months, but you can look at how you were spending your money prior to our current situation. Number 6, perform research. Again, whether it's online, do your homework. Call utility companies. Make sure that maybe the estimated amount of a utility bill might not be the actual. So you want to make sure that you get the right numbers so that you're not overpaying, so that you can keep that money in your pocket. Number 7, put it all down on paper or a spreadsheet. It doesn't have to be fancy. You can get fancy with it, and I'm going to show you some examples of that, but just make sure you write it all down so that you can actually see it and not just keeping it in your head. Number 8, you want to refine and improve your budget. Again, it may be daily, it may be weekly, it may be monthly, but with you having it written down, it'll make it easy for you to look and reprioritize your responsibilities. Treat it as an ongoing process. Perform a contingency program and do the best with the most in the most efficient way that you can. Now, here are some other tips for making your budget be successful. If you live alone, problem solved. The only thing you have to worry about is talking to yourself. No, the problem comes in is when you answer yourself. But if you live in a household with a partner, an adult partner, or maybe even children, maybe not too young, get their buy-in. Because when you get their buy-in, when you have to let them know, maybe we can't afford to buy that, they already have a better understanding that, we are on a budget. We need to be particular about what we are doing. And that opens up communications. I hate to mention it, but up there in that top 5 again, money issues are one of the reasons why people get divorced. So you want to make sure that you have open communication with all the participants in your household budget. You also, in order to be successful, you also want to make sure that you address changes in the budget, as well as addressing when you fail to meet your budget goals. If you sweep it under the carpet, that's fine for a month or 2, but eventually that's something that you're going to have to face. So what's the point? What's the point of having a budget? Well, obviously, you want your spending to be less than your earning. You want your sources of cash to be greater than the bills that you are needing to pay. So again, the point can help you shed a light on and help you to plan preventative actions, such as maybe you need to decrease some spending. Maybe You need to increase your earnings and or find some additional sources of cash. Believe it or not, Psychology Today mentioned that your sleep can actually be interrupted when you are stressed out over financial issues. So if you can take back a little bit of that control, when you budget your money, hopefully that'll be one less reason for you to lose sleep. So next here, I wanted to show you an example of a simple budget. What you see here, you can just take a notebook or a piece of paper and make some columns. In one of the columns, you'll want to put down who you owe money to. Okay, whether it's to your landlord or to a bank to pay your mortgage. Write down what the due dates are for those bills that you owe. Next, if it's a credit card, in the next column, you may want to put down what the limit of that credit card is so that you're not overspending there either. In another column, you might want to put down what the minimum payment is. Then when you actually make the payment, put down the actual amount that you paid and the date that you paid it. And maybe make a note. So what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 columns. It can be less. But the objective of this is for you to have a in-your-face example of where your money is going. What we see here next is a fancy budget. Now, sometimes I can get a little ahead of myself, but this is pretty fancy. What I've done here in this Excel spreadsheet is to embed formulas so that all I need to do is to enter what I'm depositing, as you see there. And I've already put in some of my debt that I owe: mortgage, car payment, cell phone bill, internet, car gas. Don't forget about yourself. I mean, we still need to go to the barber, of course, when the quarantine is listed. But then the formulas that are in this spreadsheet helps me to already calculate total payments, as well as automatically determine my balance. And then the formulas repeat. So from my balance, you'll see from the bottom of column F, there's $2,366, and it is copied at the top of column G. And then we start all over with the information that we're inputting into this spreadsheet. Some final budgeting tips that we covered just a moment ago. Get participant buy-in. Participant-wide participation. If you're a house of 2 people or more, get their buy-in so you can be, you have more of a chance to be successful. Again, open communication, address changes in the budget, as well as addressing where you're not meeting your budget goals. Now, I'll pause here for a moment to see if anyone has any questions. Go ahead and put them in the chat box. I'll wait a few seconds. But even if you don't have your questions now, you can still enter them in the chat box, and I will answer those once we get towards the end of our session today. So let's move on to part 2. The 2020 stimulus, also known as the CARES Act. So I think it's been about 2 weeks now where Congress approved and the president signed into law the CARES Act, which was done in response to the coronavirus pandemic. The objective was to, A, help out regular Americans and businesses because the economy has taken such a downturn. So they're hoping that by providing us with these checks, we'll go out and we'll buy things to help spur the economy. Now on this slide, I know it's kind of small, but I at least wanted to give you a representation of the actual section from the law. It is section 6428, the 2020 Recovery Rebates. And what you'll see here underlined, or hopefully you can see that it says that the rebates shall be allowed as a credit against the tax imposed for the first taxable year beginning in 2020. So what does this mean, really? First of all, it's important to understand that the rebate is actually a tax credit that will be applied when you file your 2020 tax returns next year. So what is a tax credit? Let's be clear about what that is. A tax credit is an amount of money that taxpayers can subtract from taxes owed to the government. Here's some examples of tax credits that you may be more familiar with. Earned income credit or a child tax credit. Those are more of the popular tax credits that are available. Now, I do have a question that came up. The question is, any budget templates that I would recommend? Well, there's a plethora, one of my favorite words, there's a plethora of budget templates online. All you need to do would be to go to your Google machine and just type in budget templates. If you're not able to do that, and I was going to put this towards the end of the presentation, but I'll tell you now, you can certainly email us. Email us at CTD, that's Charlie, Tom, Delta, at columbus.gov. And we'd be happy to provide a PDF or Word document to you of that simple budget that I showed you a few slides ago. So who is eligible to receive payment? Well, I've created a table here, and what we have in the first column, we'll look at tax filing status, individual, and those persons who are filing married and filing jointly. The law has established some income thresholds. For individuals, those persons, I had the wrong sign in there, those persons making less than $75,000. So again, a correction there. It's not greater than, but it's less than $75,000. They will receive $1,200. If they are parents, they will also receive an additional $500 for each eligible child, and they need to be an independent. If you are married filing jointly, again, a correction here, the income threshold for married filing jointly are for couples making less than $150,000. You would then receive $2,400 as a couple, and again, you would receive an additional $500 for each eligible child. So who are these eligible taxpayers? They are the people who filed either their 2018 or 2019 tax returns. The filers who exceed the income limits. For instance, if you are an individual who made more than $75,000, the amount of your rebate check will be reduced by $5 per $100 over that income threshold. The same would be for married filing jointly. If you, as a married couple, made more than $150,000, then your rebate check will be reduced as shown here on the slide. The source for this information is on the irs.gov/coronavirus website, and it's very informative, so I would definitely recommend that you check that out. Who is not eligible to receive the payment? So what we have here with single filers with an income exceeding $99,000 without children, they are not eligible to receive that rebate check. If you are a couple, married filing joint, if you exceed $198,000 without children, you would no longer be eligible to receive a payment either. Again, that source is from the same website, irs.gov/coronavirus. So here's some additional questions or concerns. To get the most thorough information about the economic impact payments, I would refer you to the irs.gov website, the Economic Impact Payment Information Center. And there is the website. I'll leave that up for a few seconds if you want to take a picture of it. Now, the IRS has recently, as in the last couple of days, launched a website where you can go to get up-to-date information about where your money is, or maybe you need to put in some bank information. So there's the website for that as well. The link there at irs.gov is for the coronavirus tax relief and economic impact statements. Another big question I've been hearing quite a bit: is this payment subject to taxes? The answer is no. Remember, I discussed previously that the money you are receiving is considered a tax credit that will be applied against your 2020 tax returns when we file them at the beginning of the year in 2021. So no, these payments will not be taxed. How can I check my eligibility and or payment status? Remember, I mentioned that the IRS launched the Economic Impact Payment Portal. There is the link for that. I'll leave that up in case you want to take a picture of it. Some people have a concern that they did not file taxes in 2019 or 2018. So what can you do? The IRS is recommending that you file a 2019 tax return to receive the payment. And when you're doing that filing, you can include your direct deposit bank information as well as an up-to-date address so that that amount can be forwarded to you. Now, if you happen to be not required to file a 2018 or 2019 tax return due to having low or no income, or perhaps it could be for some other reason, your question might be, will I receive a payment? Well, the answer is yes. It states right here, the IRS has a portal for non-filers, and I went on the portal myself, and it redirected me to a secure site called Free File Forms. Again, that is a secure website. They will ask you then to enter the bank account information and the address. And again, there is the website if you are a non-filer. So I have a question. So if I owe IRS money, does the credit go to 2020 or 2021? Now that I'm not sure, because that would require a deeper study as to, well, was this amount owed from 2019 or 2018? So I will apologize and defer and apologize for not having the answer. Number one, let me say I'm not a financial analyst or a tax preparer. So I would definitely recommend that you contact a tax preparer and or go on to the irs.gov website. Only you know the basics of your particular situation about when you owed the money or how much money that you owe. But I'm glad that question was brought up, and that I'll mention too. The state of Ohio has sent information to, and forgive me, I have a lot of information here, but I think it's important. Our Attorney General, Dave Yost, alerted creditors and financial institutions that these COVID-19 stimulus checks are protected under existing Ohio law from bill collectors and exempt from state and federal attachment, garnishment, or execution. Now, having said that, again, I'm not a tax preparer. If you have additional questions about, a debt collector trying to garnish your money from this stimulus, definitely contact the Attorney General's office. Again, his name is Dave Yost, Y-O-S-T, and the Attorney General's office has put information on the website that references the Ohio Revised Code that applies to payments under the Coronavirus Aid Relief. I'll give you that Ohio Revised Code number. It is ORC 2329.66. And for more questions on that, definitely contact the Ohio Attorney General's office. So, real talk. Beware budget pitfalls. Here we are. We've been quarantined for a little over a month. We're getting antsy. We get this pot of money. First thing some of us might want to do is to blow it on impulse buying. I would try to encourage you not to do that because, impulse buying takes into account our personalities. We get pleasure from being able to buy things. It's a common behavior today. And our culture is a consumption culture, despite the fact that we may be close to or in recessionary times. We still need to be careful about how we spend our money. So here are some things that you can do to avoid impulse buying. One thing you might do: create a 30-day waiting list for big purchases. Avoid going to shopping areas, except for necessities. So if you're not riding by Target, then you may not be tempted to go into Target and while you're on your way to the grocery section, you happen to pick up a swimsuit, some candy, and some other things. Avoid visiting shopping online or online shopping websites. Find free ways to reward yourself. So find ways that don't cost money to reward yourself for sticking to your plan. Be mindful of your reaction to impulse buying, or that can lead to buyer's remorse. So if you realize, when I have money, I just want to go out and spend it. It's burning a hole in my pocket. You go and buy something only to later regret it, or to later realize that, I didn't really need that. And this is a serious issue. There are, some people who have shopping addictions. So if you think you have an issue with that, and understanding how important it is for us to hold on to money, seek help. You're not the only one. Or talk to a trusted friend or counselor, someone who can help you be a little more accountable about how you spend your money. And always have a list and a plan for your purchases. Now, I do have a question here. The question is, do folks who receive Social Security only get a check, or are they considered non-filers? I'm not sure I understand. Do folks who receive SSI only get a check? Are they considered non-filers? Well, again, not being familiar with their particular situations, they may get SSI, but they might also get retirement. If they have not been, and I'll put it this way, let's look at historical data. If they have not been required to file a tax return in the last 2 years, so if they're not required to file 2019 taxes this year, if they did not file 2018 taxes last year, and I'll even add 2017, there's a particular reason, and everybody's reason is different as to why they're not filing, then they will still be able to get a check. And there is a portal on the irs.gov's website, again, that they can go to find out what their status is and whether or not they'll get that check. I'll also make this information, I was going to save it till the end, but I'll also make especially some of those tables that I had available in a PDF or Word document, so you can refer to it at your leisure. So I mentioned rewarding yourself with something that doesn't involve costs. Well, it might, well, let's see, walking. And if that's not fun, put on some music and go walking. Some other things that might not cost you money, is getting in virtual communities. There are some apps out today. I've even seen one, which I'd like to try myself, where you can play board games online with people. You can get on Zoom, the conferencing app, which is free, Zoom. I was on Zoom this past Friday with some family and friends, and they were all over the country. So those are just a couple of ideas that you can do. If it's more than just yourself, do some cooking, do some baking that you wouldn't ordinarily do. I got to say, some of my friends and I have been laughing at ourselves. Here we are baking things from scratch. And most of the time we really don't have the time to do that. Or gardening. Okay, I admit I love working in my yard, so that doesn't really cost me anything to go out and pull weeds. But there are some other ways as well. Reading a book. I know a lot of people say that, but I know I have books on my shelf. I'm more of a fan of Audible, but I've been picking up a book. It doesn't cost me anything to do that either. So those are just some ideas. If anyone else has any ideas, please put them in the chat area so that we can all share with that. So, stimulus money budget considerations. Quite a bit. The first thing you want to do is stop and make a plan. And that's what I talked about first with being aware of pitfalls. Make a plan. Many financial advisors are recommending, if you can afford it, create or add to your emergency savings. Some planners suggest having 3 months worth of bill money. Some recommend 6 months. But some of you might be saying, well, shoot, I'm just trying to survive, so I don't even have an emergency savings. If you're able to do that, go ahead and put some money in there. The next thing you want to do is strategize again before spending. So what you want to do is write down everything, all of your expenses in the month. Everything. Again, whether it's car gas, insurance, utilities, hair products, going to the barber shop, whatever it is, list those expenses. Then consider your options. You want to eliminate your wants, not your needs, but your wants. When you eliminate your wants, then you want to prioritize your essentials. You want to pare your budget down to what some planners call a core. I call it a noodle budget. I'm sure I'm not the only one that used to have a ramen noodle budget, but really pare that down to only essentials so that, again, you're not overspending. Another question I've had posed to me is, what can I do if I don't have a bank account? Now, I did some research on some options, and I don't want to endorse this particular product, nor do I use it, but Chime seems to have a great product for people who may be considered to be unbanked, meaning you don't have any bank account, or underbanked. With Chime, it's a bank account, but it's also an app. So you can do your banking on the go. It's also FDIC insured, which is very important. If you put some money in, you want to make sure that it's insured up to a certain amount that you can get that money back out as well. Another thing with Chime that I noticed, which is great, because some people are unbanked, meaning not having an account, or underbanked because they've defaulted previously on other bank accounts. Chime offers a second chance option. They don't do paychecks, credit checks to determine whether or not you've defaulted on previous bank accounts. So you have an option of establishing an account with them, and it takes 2 minutes to do so. There are other products. Another one I came across was called Simple, but there's a number of online banks that I would recommend for people who find themselves in this situation where they don't have a bank. Maybe you want that money deposited to a bank account. You can establish one with a product such as Chime or Simple in as little as 2 minutes. So thank you very much for your time today and for your questions. Personal budgeting basics and Corona relief check stimulus review. If you are interested in a copy or the slide deck of this presentation, there's our email information. In your email, please put personal budgeting and coronavirus. That will be, this presentation will be made available by Monday. Again, my name is Karen Clark. I want to thank my colleague, Kenston, who's been watching the comments and helping me to answer those. And I also want to give a bit of a preview. Next week, Kenston will be presenting again. His session will be mastering the interview. While we all know the interview is one of the key elements to a job search process. So as with any skill, you can only get better by practicing. So we invite you back next Thursday at 12 p.m. I do want to apologize for our technical difficulties that we had today, but thanks for tuning back in with us. Again, if you have any questions, and once we end this live video and it shows up in the comment section, I'll make sure to respond to those. Thanks again.